All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Hope all of you had a great Thanksgiving break. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the effects of a growing human population project, which is next on the agenda. So, before we do that, let's take a few minutes. Let's talk about what our lesson objectives really are and how they relate to the project. So, the lesson on the effects of population growth really have five main objectives. They want you to be able to define exponential growth and explain how the population is growing exponentially. Um, they want you to be able to describe the history of human population growth. They want to you should be able to describe how human population growth rates vary throughout the world. Can you discuss the factors that influence those growth rates, the fertility and the mortality rates, and then give examples of resources that humans use and the ways that humans have an impact on the environment. So a lot of what this project is going to focus on is getting you to think about the exponential growth that is occurring in our population as compared to the history of population growth, and then take a look at those resources and how we as humans have an impact on the environment with technology and agricultural advancements. So um, let's dive in a little bit and just talk about a few main points as it relates to population growth before we talk about the project. So, your lesson talked a little bit about population growth first. So, when you take a look at time, okay, and you look at the population as a whole, in about 10 seconds, what you see, the human population expands by about 31 people. So when you break the numbers down a little bit more, you see about 186 people are born every minute. That's about 11,200 people, give or take, every hour, and that's about 260,000 people every day. So we have a very quickly expanding human population. Okay, and although we have been able to inhabit the planet for several million years, what we have seen is that the most rapid population growth has come in really the last few centuries. So um, we know that from our studies previously that population growth is directly linked to our natural resource use, okay, and that the resources that we have in an environment play a role that determines the size of the population that it can support, okay, and it just makes sense. um, so when you see that populations have increased very rapidly, beginning probably about 500 years ago, give or take, what you see is that this exponential growth has created a strain on the limited resources essentially that the planet has. So there are factors that play a role in supporting the size of populations, okay? And you know that populations are affected by the births that occur, the deaths that occur, and then the migration either into and out of um, populations, okay? And some of the factors or the trends that we see is that the population is continuing to increase and it's projected to continue to increase. Um, so when you look today, the human population is growing exponentially at somewhere around a rate of about almost 1.25% every year. Okay, and that's down from a peak of 2.2% back in 1963. However, population growth varies. Okay, so when you look at trends in Europe and Africa, the population in Africa is actually going down, but the population the population in Europe is going down, but the population in Africa is actually going up. Okay, so these trends that you see um, are really dependent on location. Okay, so when you look at the environment and you look at some of the natural resources that are essentially being or needed or used there's a lot of common objects out there that I think we all probably take for granted that we have, that are resources and require natural resources in many instances to sustain them. So, cars. A lot of us have cars. We take that for granted, okay? There's tons of resources that are required to make, use, or get them, okay? You have in cars alone 15 different metals, okay? They require fuel, which is a non-renewable resource, okay? Our houses, the trees that make them up, the rocks and minerals for the construction, okay, the granite and the gravel and the sand. Okay, when you look at these resources, they're both renewable and non-renewable, and as populations increase, it can put a strain on those resources, okay? So, think about this in terms of the Earth's carrying capacity, okay? Technological advances in agriculture might increase or might be able to increase the planet's carrying capacity. However, this really could only happen if technology advanced as quickly as our population does. And while technology does advance very rapidly, especially now, there are other factors that could increase our carrying capacity and would allow us to consume less and advance. So that leads us really into the project here, okay? So this project asks you to consider that those agricultural and technical advances allow for a larger carrying capacity of humans on the planet. The question is personally, would you be in favor of this, okay? And based on what you've read in the lesson, and I'm going to show you a website that I want you to view and research, I want you to think about and craft three consequences that you may be able to foresee occurring with this scenario. Okay, so what you're going to do, and I'm going to post this site on the link as well, but you're going to go to this website. And it's going to talk about carrying capacity. It's going to talk about the ecological standpoint. It's going to talk about, okay, the second law of thermodynamics, okay, and an argument related to that. And then it's going to talk a little bit about why economics can't cope presently with the boom of populations. And then from there, it's going to ask you, or it's going to have you read about appropriated carrying capacity and ecological footprints. And then finally, okay, talk about sustaining development. Okay, so I want you to read this, and I want you to take what you've read from this, go back to the project, okay, tell me in part one, are you in favor of allowing for agricultural and technical advances, allowing for a much larger carry capacity, and why? Would you be in favor of this and why? And then the second part to this is based on what you learned, I want you to tell me three consequences that you may be able to foresee occurring if agriculture and technology allowed for a much larger carrying capacity on the planet. So there's two parts to this, all right? I want it to be around 500 words. You can do 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, however you want, okay? Using that website as your guide, okay? And then if you find other credible websites that you would like to place in there, you can cite those as well. I'm looking for, like I said, 2 to 3 paragraphs. Submit your responses. You can do them here on the essay link, or you can write it all in a Word document and you can attach it and send it this way too. Okay. Um, Good sentence structure, good grammar, good punctuation. By this point in the semester, I would expect that from all of you. If you're having any questions or problems with this project, I'll be more than happy to meet with you in the VO this week. And we'll be back here next week talking a little bit more about the effects of human population growth. And again, if you have any problems, please come and see me and have a great week.